Hello and welcome everyone. In today's video, we are going to see the most common tactical pattern called as the Greek gift sacrifice. Now this sacrifice happens on the h7 square with the bishop. This can happen in any opening. I have seen someone playing it in 5 different openings. In this video, we are going to cover it in all the openings. First, let's start with the French defense. We play our pawn to e4, they respond with e6, the French defense, d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6. We play the advanced variation by pushing our pawn to e5, the knight goes back. Now we play a knight to f3, normal developing moves, the bishop goes to b4 square, pinning our knight, and we now play our bishop to d3. You know the main idea in the Greek gift sacrifice is to capture on this h7 square. You are sacrificing your bishop on the h7 square for a quick attack. This is the most common tactical pattern and many of the players fall in this. 99% of your opponent would not know how to respond correctly to the Greek gift sacrifice. So here after they pin our knight, we play our bishop to d3 and many of the players would castle. And then comes in the Greek gift sacrifice. We capture on the h7 square, give a check. He captures our bishop, then we can go with a knight to g5, give a check. Now there are various responses what black can do. The black can go back on the h8 square, can go on g8, can come on h6, can go on g6 square. We are going to have a look at all of these lines. Let's first start with the most easiest one, which is king h8. Now eventually you were going to bring your queen to h5, queen h7 was a checkmate. But this happens with a tempo. Now when the king goes to h8 square, queen h5 comes with a check. King has no other option but to go on the g8 square and queen h7 will be a checkmate. That was an easy one. Well, what if he's not going on the h8 square? Instead, he tries to go on the g8 square. Well, that doesn't stop us from moving our queen to h5. We still go queen h5. The idea is to now play the queen to h7, give a check. If he tries to create some room for his king to escape by moving his rook to e1, now you don't immediately go for queen h7, but instead you do an intermediate move first. You see this pawn on the f7 square is attacked twice with your knight as well as with the queen. The rook was defending it earlier, but now it is no more defending the f7 square. So you first go and capture on the f7 square, give a check. The king can only go on the h8 square and now you come back on h5 and give a check. The king goes to g8. Now we have transposed to the same position that we have seen before with the slight difference that now there's no pawn on the f7 square. And you'll come to know it in a minute that why have we done that. Now after king goes to g8, you go queen h7, give a check. The king goes to the f8, queen h8. This and now queen g7 is a checkmate. So see, this is the difference that there's no pawn on the f7 square. That's why queen g7 resulted into a checkmate. So you should always be careful about looking at this in-between move or intermediate moves of giving checks and exposing the king. Okay, this was when the king was going back on the g8 square. Now let's have a look what if he comes on h6. Now when he comes on the h6 square, he is falling himself into a trap. Look at this bishop protecting the knight, not only the knight but is also giving a discord attack to the king then. Now you can simply play a knight to e6 or you can play a knight to f7. It's a double check, attacking the king with the knight with the bishop, also forking the queen. So winning the queen is actually winning the game. So that's how you will be winning the game there. Now let's have a look at the most complicated but useful thing. What if your opponent is aware about this Greek gift sacrifice and he tries to go with his king to g6. Now king g6, you cannot directly go queen h5, it will be lost. There are 3 different ways of playing this line. Here you can either go queen d3, give a check and ask the king to go here and then he falls for the same trap, you win the queen. The other line is you go queen g4 and give an attack, try to give a discard attack to the king on the next move. And the most easiest one is to play the pawn to h4. The idea is to play pawn h5 and give a check, push the king again in the corner, open the rook file. And in future you can also try to rook lift the rook. Let's first see what happens when we play our queen to g4. Queen d3 was direct. I have shown you queen d3, the king goes to h6 and you win the queen by playing your knight to f7. Here let's see after queen g4, what can he do? So after king g4, what he can do is he can play his pawn to f5, right? Pawn f5 then tries to give your attack to your queen. Now if you go knight e6, the queen is no longer giving a check to the king because the pawn can simply capture it, right? Here if you try to do an opposite, then he can capture it back with the knight. The knight comes in the game, attacks the queen further, and this is a little complicated for the white side. We don't want the complications, right? Simply what we can do is after he places pawn to f5, you go with the queen to g3. It's okay to wait for one move. On the next move, your threat is still to play your pawn to e6, knight to e6 and give an attack to the right. If he places queen to e7 protecting the e6 square, you still can give a check just by moving the knight anywhere. Let's say the knight goes to e6 and give a check. After that you can go queen g7 and it will be a checkmate soon. Correct? Okay. Still queen g4 was not that convincing, right? So what to do? Play simple, just go for the pawn to h4. Now here if he tries to play anything like pawn f5 or pawn f6, that doesn't stop us from playing pawn h5. Attack the king. If the king goes back on the h6 square, now knight e6 gives an attack, a discard attack from the bishop to the king, and the knight gives an attack to the queen, and you win the queen there on the spot. Simple. Alright, this was all when he was accepting the sacrifice. He was capturing the bishop on the h7 square. Some players might not do that. Some players, let's say, might just play their king to h8. Well, still we are going to repeat the same move. After he goes with his king to h8, you still go knight g5. Now, make sure one thing, that when you play a knight to g5, your bishop has to protect this. Otherwise, the king is going to capture your knight. So this is something that you have to be careful in the opening. If your bishop's diagonal is open, only then you try to play your knight to g5. Okay. After he plays his pawn to g6, trying to trap your bishop in the corner, now we can go with our queen to g4. The idea is simple, to go on the h file by h4 or h3 anyways. Even he cannot now capture the bishop, right? Now even if he tries to go away from the h file, let's say he goes with his king to g7, you can now simply sacrifice anywhere your knight. You can play it on the f7 square or on the e6 square. Look at these pieces, they are attacking on the g6 pawn. So you can play your knight to f7, maybe the rook captures it, and then queen g6 gives a check. You are going to win the rook eventually. The king goes to f8, you go here, this comes down, then the bishop comes to f6 square and you win the game there on spot, right? Alright, coming back to a line where your opponent tries to act a little smart and he plays, instead of bishop b4, he plays his bishop to e7, trying to stop you from coming on the g5 square with the knight. So what to do? You play the normal moves, bishop d3, castle. Here you cannot go knight g5 because there are two attackers, the bishop and the queen, and the only piece that is defending it is your bishop. So what to do here? You first play your pawn to h4. Here if he does any normal move, like let's say he plays his pawn to c5, ignoring the threat, that you can still play your knight to g5. Let's say he does this pawn c5 move, you go bishop h7, give a check, king captures it, knight g5. Even if the bishop captures it, now the rook joins the party. The rook gives an attack to the king. If the king goes back, then queen h5, and eventually it is going to be a checkmate on the h8 square. Even if he tries to stop it, we lock the door just by pushing our pawn to g6, and queen h8 is going to be a checkmate on the next move. Okay, what if he is not doing a random move? Let's say, what if he is not playing the pawn to c5? Instead, he is playing pawn f6, trying to stop that g5 knight again by playing his pawn to f6. Well, that is again a blunder because you any which ways go knight g5. Now your idea is to go bishop h7, give a check. The king cannot capture, the king has to go in, and then knight f7 can be a threat. So if he captures here, then you go bishop h7, give a check, king captures it, and you sooner or later transposes to the same position. He goes back, queen. Here you can go queen h5 and give a check, but better is to get a tempo, play your rook to h8 first, the king captures it, now you go queen h5, again with a check, the king goes in the corner, and now you lock the door, trying to protect the h7 square with g6 pawn, and also not allowing him to escape from the room that he has created of the f7 square, right? Even if the rook goes to the corner, queen h7, queen h8 is going to be a checkmate eventually, right? Okay. Now let's see, if he is not playing his pawn to f6, what can he do else? He can play his pawn to h6. If he plays his pawn to h6, that doesn't help because now you are going to capture on the h6 square with your bishop. So if he captures, now you play your knight to g5, he captures it, you capture it back, and the queen comes on the g5 square. Or the other idea can be simply play your queen to d2, attack on the h6 square. Or one simple idea can be to play your rook to h3 and g3. This we call as the rook lift. There are n number of variations that you can try over here. But if your opponent falls for this in the French defense, this is how you can go and do the Greek gift sack. Alright, so if you are an attacking player, player, this is something that you should definitely know. The Greek gift sacrifice is the most common tactical motive and results into 99% of the win rate. For more such amazing tricks and traps, stay tuned with us. Till the time, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel and share with your friends and family.